Tonight, Canadians self-isolating as officials track potential exposures from the deadly outbreak of hantavirus on a cruise ship.
They are actively being monitored and working with the local public health authorities.
The race to trace dozens of people across multiple countries as the World Health Organization insists the risk to the public is low.
I want to be unequivocal here. This is not SARS-CoV-2. This is not the start of a COVID pandemic.
Plus, plans from the Liberal government to speed up approvals of major energy projects.
We've been seeing the steady rolling back of environmental safeguards.
Reaction to the stories CBC News first broke, and At Issue will be here to tackle the political implications. And researchers used DNA to identify 4 sailors from the doomed Franklin expedition.
To know that I had a connection to it was really interesting.
New revelations in the Canadian Arctic mystery.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thank you for joining us. The luxury cruise ship at the center of the deadly hantavirus outbreak is heading for the Canary Islands tonight with 4 Canadians still on board. But we now know dozens of people left that ship nearly 2 weeks ago before the outbreak was noticed. The ship's operator now says about 30 people disembarked on the island of St. Helena, among them 2 Canadians who are now back in this country. They and a 3rd Canadian traveler are self-isolating, and global health officials are trying to tamp down fears about the outbreak, which has killed 3 people and made at least 5 others sick. Chris Brown with their message to the world tonight.
With a global hunt underway to track the movements of anyone who might have been exposed to hantavirus on the Honduras cruise ship, the World Health Organization is underscoring the risk to public health is low.
I want to be unequivocal here. This is not SARS-CoV-2. This is not the start of a COVID pandemic. This is an outbreak that we see on a ship.
But this strain of hantavirus, typically found in South America, can be passed between people who have close contact. So there's concern where the ship is expected to dock on Sunday in Tenerife on the Canary Islands. The strain also has a long incubation period, up to 6 weeks.
It's possible that more cases may be reported.
The voyage began in Argentina and headed northwards. Authorities believe a Dutch couple on board had visited areas in South America where the virus might have been present in rats. One of them died on the ship, the other in South Africa, and a German woman also died on board. The WHO helped evacuate 3 people when the ship stopped off Cape Verde and airlifted them to the Netherlands. British expedition guide Martin Anstey is among 5 other people confirmed or suspected of being infected. 4 Canadians remain on the ship. We now know 2 others got off on the island of St. Helena and flew home before the full extent of the outbreak was known. They've been told to self-isolate, as has another Canadian who was not on the ship but was on the same flight.
I've been in touch with my counterparts in the Netherlands, in the UK, and in Spain this morning so that we are staying coordinated.
As for the 100 or so people still on board, authorities say they're in good health, although some are stressed as they remain quarantined in their cabins. Thankfully, everyone is doing well and we're healthy, said this Turkish passenger. The tracing efforts now being undertaken by at least 12 countries are focused on anyone who might have sat next to a potentially infected person on a flight or had a cabin near them on the ship. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Officials here say they are in touch with the Canadians still on board the cruise ship, and of course, they're monitoring those now self-isolating. Christine Birak with what we know about their circumstances and how this virus acts.
Before the hantavirus outbreak was confirmed, 2 Canadians left the MV Honduras late last month and are now home.
The 2 individuals are in fact Ontario residents, and they are actively being monitored and working with the local public health authorities on a daily basis to make sure that the isolation is occurring.
A 3rd Canadian from Quebec is also isolating. That person was never on the cruise, but was aboard the same flight as the two from Ontario. A joint statement from the Health and Foreign Affairs ministers says the Quebecer is also back home, flagged because they may have come into contact with the symptomatic individual, but is not considered a high-risk close contact.
At this point, it is believed that they are not in any way a risk of transmission, but it is fluid.
Then there are the 4 Canadians still on board the cruise ship, heading for the Canary Islands.
I have deployed consular officials who are currently en route to Tenerife.
Not only will they be met by Canadian officials, the WHO says experts along with doctors from the Netherlands are now on board the ship, assessing everyone's risk of infection.
The biology of this virus is quite a bit different than, COVID or influenza, for example.
Scientists at this leading Canadian microbiology lab say, unlike the early days of COVID, hantavirus is not a mystery. Outbreaks are already well documented in Argentina and Chile. Instead of the nose and throat like COVID, hantavirus replicates slowly, deep in the lungs. Those infected don't start shedding the virus until they're clearly sick.
We really only see person-to-person transmission in tight quarters and close spaces for prolonged periods of time, and usually with quite ill individuals, and not in cases where people are asymptomatic.
Canadians who've arrived home have been asked to self-isolate for 30 days. Scientists we spoke with say that's reasonable given the timelines and the way this virus behaves.
So, Christine, we keep hearing people say don't panic, and that's important. But I think, to be fair, people are also still a little scarred from the pandemic. So give us a sense, if you can, of where the risk really sits.
I get that. We are hearing with each passing day another person in hospital. Now we're sitting here talking about travelers. It is eerie, but there are some important differences. This is not a new virus. South America sees about 100 cases of hantavirus every year. What's unique is this unfolded on a ship, and there will likely be more cases between close contacts. But public health officials say now that they know what they're dealing with, they have the tools to manage this outbreak.
All right, good to know. Christine Birak, thank you.
You're welcome.
Manitoba has declared a public health emergency over HIV infection rates. More than 300 new cases were reported last year. That is over 3 times more than the 90 cases seen in 2019. Well, tonight, health officials say they're working to contain the crisis. But as Cameron McIntosh shows us, some say the rise in cases was preventable.
I just want everybody to get tested.
Vanessa Roulette is living with HIV.
I used to be an addict. I picked up a needle that was somebody else's, and I injected it.
Diagnosed in 2018, she fits the profile of Manitoba's growing HIV crisis, now 3.5 times the national average, hitting the Indigenous population hardest.
We need more people out there on the footwork to tell, you need to get tested.
So this emergency, it's not about creating fear.
Manitoba's chief provincial public health officer declaring a state of emergency, saying high rates of intravenous drug use, homelessness, and mental health issues are all contributing. Social issues where the Indigenous population is disproportionately represented.
Our focus is going to be on reducing new infections, improving access to care, supporting people living with HIV.
Province has declared a state of emergency. What do you make of that?
Well, we've been saying this was going to end up in an emergency situation for years.
Indigenous health advocates say racism and trust are problems in the healthcare system, which many northern Indigenous communities can barely access.
We need a coordinated response. We need First Nations-led solutions. We need public health available.
Some are looking with hope to British Columbia, where infection rates have dropped 90% since the 1990s, after decades of investment in subsidized testing, preventative medications, and free treatment.
Based on the concept that someone is on treatment, they can't transmit HIV, and they've seen that epidemic in BC go the other way.
The state of emergency allows Manitoba to quickly increase funding towards HIV prevention and treatment. First steps towards fixing a crisis that could take decades. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
BC Premier David Eby says Tumbler Ridge Secondary School will be torn down and rebuilt following the deadly mass shooting there.
This is the path that is supported by the community of Tumbler Ridge to build a new school, to replace it on a different site. And the discussions about what will happen when the old school is removed on that site in terms of what's best for the community will be part of this planning process.
In February, an 18-year-old shooter killed their mother and half-brother at home before fatally shooting 5 children and an educator at the school. Since then, temporary classrooms have been set up on the grounds of the local elementary school. EB says the timeline for the new building is, quote, as quickly as possible. And at least 9 schools in Ontario's Halton region received anonymous bomb threats this morning, but police deemed none of them credible.
Luckily, some of those schools obviously weren't fully occupied yet, which allowed us to get in there and search and determine whether or not that threat was credible in any way.
Police say they found no on-site evidence. On Tuesday, 16 Toronto schools also received unfounded threats. Right now, investigators don't believe the incidents are linked. Well, we have new details about the Carney government's major projects push. CBC News has learned legislation could be coming to get projects like pipelines approved and built faster. But as Kate McKenna shows us, the reaction tonight is pretty mixed.
Possible legislation could be coming to
Possible, yeah.
Okay.
The government House leader confirms more changes are coming to get more projects, including pipelines, built faster.
We have a lot of work to do to continue progress on reforming a regulatory process, make sure everyone is heard, but also make sure they go faster. I don't think that's a secret.
Declare Part 2, including the schedule.
Last year, the government passed Bill C-5, giving itself extraordinary powers to bypass regulations to fast-track hand-picked projects, powers the opposition says the Prime Minister hasn't used.
He said these powers would allow him to build at unimaginable speeds. 11 months later, he has not used them once to approve a single solitary project.
But government sources say new proposals will streamline the process for all projects and fulfill the Liberal campaign promise of getting approvals within 2 years.
We're moving forward at speed, but we're doing it in the right way. Consultation with Indigenous partners, with provinces, with all stakeholders.
For years, industry has warned approvals take too long.
Having a long timeline adds costs. It adds capital costs, interest costs, and it makes us less competitive.
I was reassured by Prime Minister, with Energy Minister, and also the Finance Minister. They are aware of the urgency of Canada stepping up.
This week, the Prime Minister met with the head of the International Energy Agency, who told Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton Canada's next steps matter.
We have 3-4 years that the governments around the world will make huge decisions in terms of the energy trade, new partners, new technologies. And Canada is very well positioned to answer those demands.
But environmental lawyers fear what's in the fine print.
We've been seeing the steady rolling back of environmental safeguards since this government came into power.
Exactly what the government plans to change is still unclear. Mark Carney now has a majority and can pass legislation without opposition support, but in the past, efforts to tweak these rules have been controversial.
So, Kate, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is meeting with the Prime Minister on Friday. They are likely to talk energy as well.
Yes, Ottawa and Alberta are locked in negotiations about their memorandum of understanding, trying to hammer out a deal on how long it's going to take to increase the industrial carbon tax in Alberta. That's something that industry is hoping to get clarity on as well.
Kate, thank you. That is Kate McKenna in Ottawa tonight. The At Issue panel will dig into this story later, including what it means for the MOU that Kate mentioned. That is in about 20 minutes. Well, the former Alberta Premier and leader of the province's United Conservative Party is beefing up his security after he was told his personal data was shared with Alberta separatists, part of a data breach affecting millions of voters. Julia Wong now on why Jason Kenney worries he's been singled out.
I think there have to be consequences for this.
Former Alberta Premier Jason Kenney expressing shock and concern after the personal information of millions of Alberta voters was compromised.
I immediately thought, this can't be good for me, because some of the more over-caffeinated people in the separatist movement are the kinds of people who've been making fairly frequent threats against me.
pro-separatist group the Centurion Project had created a database of the voter information. The Alberta NDP say they obtained a recording of an online meeting with Centurion Project supporters and some United Conservative Party caucus staff where they called up Kenney's personal information. CBC News has not independently seen the recording, but provincial NDP leader Naheed Nenshi warned Kenney personally.
Out of 5 million people in Alberta, they chose me to publicize my personal information in the most explicit way. That wasn't by accident. I think it's borderline incitement.
There's no love lost between Kenney and some hardcore separatists. In 2022, they pushed him out as leader of the United Conservative Party. Kenney now taking security measures and looking at civil action. Inside the legislature, finger-pointing of who knew what when.
Why didn't the Premier's staff member tell her? Why didn't he tell anybody?
We know that he withheld this data because he wanted to turn it into a political stunt to play some kind of gotcha on the government.
Public pressure ramping up too. Dozens of academics have signed a letter calling for action.
If we have an independence referendum in October without a public inquiry, people will justifiably question the legitimacy of that election outcome.
A separate judicial review has paused the process of verifying the petition for a referendum. Still, organizers say they can force the Premier's hand by gaining influence in her party.
The Premier can put this to a ballot regardless of what happens with Elections Alberta, and that's why you would want to join the UCP.
Elections Alberta says more than 560 people access the Centurion Project database. Cease and desist letters have been sent to all of them. The RCMP, Elections Alberta, and the province's privacy commissioner are all now investigating. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Faced with rising fuel costs, Air Canada is making more cuts to its schedule. The carrier says it will end service earlier than usual this year on 4 seasonal routes to the U.S. The affected flights depart Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver for smaller destinations like Raleigh, Sacramento, and Charleston. According to the airline, service will remain in place until at least the end of July and is expected to resume again next year. Well, backlash is building tonight against telecom giant Bell Canada for firing employees over violating work from the office rules. Anis Haidari has the details and the fallout.
Bell Canada is firing people, accusing them of violating attendance policies. The company says it's required employees to work on site several days a week since 2022. But some workers and their legal counsel say that wasn't firm.
The managers told them, it's okay. Don't worry about the policy. You can keep working here as long as you want. Then suddenly, one day, Bell decides to fire everybody.
In a statement, the company said the cases involved deliberate and repeated falsification of workplace attendance and claimed some employees would swipe in and then immediately leave the office. Now fired Bell workers who spoke with CBC News deny this, and dozens are threatening legal action to regain severance pay.
This is a big money-saving move for Bell to fire all those people for cause and pay them nothing.
Bell firmly denies these terminations are financially motivated.
Working in the office has not been deemed by courts or arbitrators to be an unreasonable request.
Despite that, this employment lawyer says firing is usually a last resort.
Courts have coined the just cause as the capital punishment of employment law. So generally, there is an expectation under the Canada Labour Code that an employer employs progressive discipline for minor misconduct.
But Bell may not consider avoiding the office minor. In a letter to Bell employees obtained by CBC News, the Chief Human Resources Officer said this bad faith conduct undermines trust, fairness, and shared requirements. Bell may avoid paying millions of dollars in severance since they fired workers for violating policy, a fight at least some of those now former employees say they'll try and take to court. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
The U.S. military says it hit several sites in Iran tonight after an unprovoked attack on 3 of its destroyers transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian state media claims U.S. ships were attacked after they tried to stop 2 commercial vessels from reaching Iranian ports. The Pentagon denies Iran's claims that the destroyers were damaged, but both sides seem to have returned to an uneasy ceasefire. Donald Trump called the U.S. retaliation a, quote, love tap, Citing ongoing peace negotiations on social media, Trump wrote, "We will knock them out a lot harder and a lot more violently in the future if they don't get their deal signed fast."
It's good to see you. Good morning. It was almost a year that was here with you.
And the U.S. Secretary of State met with Pope Leo, the first Trump cabinet-level meeting at the Vatican in nearly a year. Rubio presented a glass football. In return, he received a pen made from olive wood, the plant of peace, the Pope remarked. Leo has been sharply critical of the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran. Donald Trump has accused the Pope of being pro-crime and as recently as yesterday of supporting Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Well, DNA has helped identify 4 sailors who died in an expedition dating back to the 1800s.
I thought, this is crazy. And to know that I had a connection to it was really interesting.
Reaction from their descendants and how these findings can provide new insight to the ill-fated Franklin expedition.
No buffalo wings. No
2 restaurants drop the gloves as their teams face off in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Nothing buffalo on the menu. No buffalo sauce. No buffalo wraps.
I'll have to ship them back all of our Montreal seasoning in a big box.
We're back in 2.
I would say, on behalf of the Government of Canada, what an honor it is to greet you, meet you, and I would like to thank
A royal welcome from Prime Minister Mark Carney for Princess Margriet of the Netherlands. It kicks off a 5-day visit for the Dutch royal, reaffirming the Netherlands' special relationship with Canada. Margriet was born in Ottawa during the royal family's wartime exile, making her the first royal princess ever born in North America. Well, a team of Ontario researchers is putting some names and faces to an enduring Canadian mystery. The anthropologists used DNA technology to identify 4 sailors from the doomed 1845 Franklin expedition. As Thomas Daigle tells us, they matched samples from skeletal remains to the sailors' living descendants.
Here we are at the stern of the ship.
A Canadian mystery buried deep in the Arctic.
What you see here are 2 brass cannon.
Sir John Franklin's failed expedition has baffled researchers since the 1800s. Now, using skeletal remains and DNA, University of Waterloo anthropologists have identified 4 more sailors from that doomed mission, providing personal stories and new insight.
We know in broad strokes what happened to the Franklin expedition. What we don't fully understand is why what happened happened.
After the British Navy's HMS Erebus and Terror got stuck in ice while exploring the Northwest Passage, all 129 crew members died. Among them, Harry Pegler and John Bridgens. Once brought to life in this fictionalized TV drama, both men's remains have now been identified.
Harry Pegler's sister's great-great-granddaughter was a perfect match. So we confirmed this was Harry Pegler.
Years after taking samples in Nunavut, researchers found potential descendants who were asked for their own DNA.
I got the news from Dr. Stenton's team that, bingo, we've got a match. We've been reporting it.
Rich Preston, a news anchor in London, recently found out his relative was once a steward on Erebus.
He is my great-great-great uncle. That's the connection.
And what went through your mind when you found out?
I thought, this is crazy. And to know that I had a connection to it was really interesting.
Meaningful, too, for historian Ken McGugan, who wrote the book Searching for Franklin. He says each piece of the story is worth exploring.
To figure out who was where and what exactly happened, because as I say, this is so important to Canadian history.
DNA has helped identify 6 sailors so far. Generations have passed, with more answers still to come. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
We now have a date for when Canada's next Governor-General will be installed. It is June the 8th. Louise Arbour was named to the job earlier this week. She was formerly a Supreme Court Justice and a UN Chief Prosecutor. After the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hey, Rosie.
Hey, Adrian. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Liberals moving to speed up approvals on resource projects.
The oil production in Canada, largely driven by the oil sands, is at a record high.
So could Ottawa move things along for a new pipeline? What would that mean for separatists in Alberta? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and a whole lot more. At issue tonight, pipeline politics. Ottawa is preparing to speed up approvals for pipelines and all other resource projects, something the Prime Minister says has great benefit to the country.
The oil production in Canada, largely driven by the oil sands, is at a record high. It's moved up over the course of the last decade from 3 million barrels per day to over 5 million barrels per day. That brings great benefits to the country.
The move comes as Ottawa negotiates its memorandum of understanding with Alberta, and the calls for a referendum on separation get louder. Former Premier Jason Kenney says progress on a deal could help address those frustrations.
We've got to rebut that argument, and the Prime Minister can help us by getting to a positive conclusion on the negotiations over this MOU soon.
So what could progress on the MOU mean for Alberta and Ottawa? Could pipelines soothe separatist sentiments? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj. Good to see everyone. So a couple things moving on this file. The Premier and the Prime Minister meeting tomorrow in Ottawa. And then this news that my colleagues were reporting that that there's going to be some permanent changes to a bunch of pieces of legislation to help speed up approvals above and beyond C5, which is sort of a sunsetted piece of legislation. I wonder, when you take all those things together, Chantal, what that tells you about the federal government's willingness, first of all, to build a pipeline, and how they're dealing with the potential of a referendum in the fall.
Oof. First problem, yes, if you're going to go for a pipeline, you should probably do so earlier rather than later. Why? Because you do not really want to do it maybe against the backdrop of a Quebec campaign, where it might not play as well as it would play in Alberta. But I think it's all a bit more complicated than that. In the sense that I think if the federal government wanted to achieve anything by doing whatever it wants to do, and we don't know what that is, it should want to make sure that there's not a referendum question in that long list that Alberta wants to ask that is about, do you want to leave Canada or not? Because at that point you open a different can of worms, which is the role of the federal government in an exercise like this. And that could play even more badly against the backdrop of a Quebec campaign. And at some point, it's okay to say, we don't want to have a referendum in Alberta on sovereignty, but maybe you also don't want to have a Quebec government elected that is committed to one.
I mean, do you think, Andrew, tying those things all together in the way that Jason Kenney did, and that others have as well, that they are directly connected, the idea of a pipeline and economic, sovereignty and natural resources and national unity?
Well, they may well be in terms of the government's motivations. I don't think they should be linked in any public fashion. I don't think we should be seen to be rewarding people for threatening the country. This idea that we've allowed to take hold over many decades in this country, that this is a knife at the throat that you can hold against your fellow Canadians in return for concessions of power or money or both, is a pernicious one. And the reward for us doing that is we now face the prospect of not just one, but possibly two referendums in two different provinces in quick succession. So it's a mug's game. It's a road we should never have gone down. Now, all that being said, of course, the federal government should be interested in building pipelines. What they propose in the terms of the regulation changes are no more than what they had talked about earlier, which was to remove some of the extra layers of regulatory review that have accrued over the years. Sure. When they brought in Bill C5, some of us said, well, rather than do this where you say we're going to exempt certain projects from the regulations, why don't you just prune the regulation generally? So it can hardly be faulted for them doing that. If it happens to have the beneficial effect of also tamping down sentiment in Alberta, fine, but don't link them explicitly or publicly.
Yeah, I mean, I think C5, it was sort of almost a stopgap until they could get the changes that you're talking about, which may be very complicated to do as well. Althea.
I think that's interesting revisionist history. I don't think it was a stopgap because they spent a lot of political capital on a piece of legislation that was terrible. I think it's a realization, frankly, that none of the projects want to be listed as a project of national interest under C5 because they're all worried that it is not going to land them where they want to be, which is getting their project done faster because they're worried about court challenges. I don't know exactly what the CBC was reporting, but what I'm hearing is that there will be changes to the impact assessment, which were signaled way back last fall. Also possibly changes to the Species at Risk Act, also changes to the Fisheries Act. But environmentalists are obviously very concerned about this. The devil is in the detail. We have seen time and time again with this government that that when you actually read the fine print, there are things that you are more concerned about than at the outset. I think the other issue that my colleagues were talking about on the national sovereignty front and the provincial sovereignty front, they are linked because the Premier of Alberta has linked them back in October when she said that the test of a pipeline, getting a pipeline approved, was a test of whether the Federation worked. And now we have an interesting case where you actually have a Prime Minister that does want to build the pipeline, but you have industry and you have the government of Alberta basically fighting back against the MOU, the terms of the agreement that they signed on to last November. And it's interesting to see where they're going to land because they both can't get what they want.
But we can't possibly run a federation on the basis that if you get your way on an issue, it means the federation works. But if you don't get your way on an issue, it means the federation doesn't work, and it means you get to blow up the country. That's just an absolutely insane way to run a country that no other federation indulges in.
Chantal.
And if I can bring it back to economics, I am still waiting to see the private promoter of any of those pipelines or other projects. I mean, yeah, I can see the politics, and I don't disagree with Andrew. There is a trap there. If you're going to be Mark Carney and saying we're all going to go for this pipeline, people who actually promote separation should be saying, well, look what that got us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look what more we could get if we push this further. But my bottom line question is, okay, fine, you do whatever you want with regulations if that's your plan, but show me a private promoter. You do not tell me that the government of Alberta is studying 3 routes and the government of Canada 2 routes in other areas of BC. I don't think that's the job of government. I think the job of government is to see if there are serious private promoters for a viable project.
Well, that Canada Strong Fund, though, the sovereignty fund that we talked about last week, you know, when I talked to Minister Hodgson on Sunday on my show, you know, he didn't say they would use it for that, but it is something that is there that could be used for that.
The Minister of Finance said that it could be used, and it probably would be used for pipelines. Canadians could buy into it in order to be part of the pipeline.
Yeah, whether that's a private proponent or not. Yeah, go ahead, Chantal, sorry.
And do we agree that, or do we want to know if a majority of Canadians on the right and the left want to co-own another pipeline?
Yeah. Yeah, these are all good questions.
To mortgage to pay up, so I'm just asking.
Okay, let's leave that there, knowing that we will come back to it. When we come back, though, we'll take a look at Canada's industrial strategy after Honda pauses the development on a billion-dollar EV plant.
Different policies around the world, but I'm still confident that electrification is our North Star.
A $15 billion plant, in fact. So what does the move mean for Canada's auto sector? Can deals in other industries ease the pain? That's next. Walk away entirely from a $15 billion EV battery plant after billions in subsidies from provincial and federal governments. The company will only say it is a pause, but the finance minister says it is a global trend.
People are delaying a number of projects around the world, not unique to Canada. But I'm very confident that's still our North Star. We see more and more investment in electrification around the world.
Conservatives say the move is a fantasy.
It's not a plan, but an illusion. He claims that we're going to replace 83% of our automotive sales to the US by making electric vehicles that people don't want to buy.
So here to break down the trials and tribulations of Canada's industrial strategy, Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Althea, I'm going to start with you. Do you think that the strategy to bring EV industry here, that was really the previous Liberal government's idea, that was maybe a mistake, or that it's falling apart, or what do you make of how the finance minister responded to this news?
Well, I think you need to think back about the context, which was we were basically competing for investment with the United States under Joe Biden, where large subsidies were being offered, and that's why we were offering rather equivalent subsidies or trying to level the playing field in order to court that interest. And I do think it's a bit of a lesson learned. Like, there are trends, and I'm not saying that climate change is not important and that the future is not electric, but we have developed a culture of serious private sector subsidies from government in order to guide political decisions and policy decisions. And this government is still continuing down that road in terms of having the heavy hand of the state kind of guide where they think the future lies. And sometimes those bets are wrong. And sometimes we find out in the long term, and sometimes we find out in the short term. And there's certainly an argument to be made that perhaps the investment climate would be a lot stronger if instead of tilting the scale, it just created a level playing field for other participants and other entrants. But that is a different thing than what I think Pierre Poilievre was talking about, frankly. But I'll leave it there.
Okay, Chantal.
I wish I could say that the North American auto industry, and by that I mean the American auto industry, has been forward-thinking over the course of my lifetime, and that it has seen the future and adjusted to it. I believe that we are now in some kind of a bubble caused by the Trump policies on EVs. So I am not saying that it's not predictable that the EV investments from private car companies hoping to break into the North American market will pause. I'm just saying at some point, given what's happening in China, India, Europe, we may be the last place in the world where cars that run on fuel rather than EVs are doing well. And if the auto industry executives want to contradict me, then they need to account for all those bailouts we had to give them because they never think forward.
Andrew?
Well, we gave them all those bailouts long before the EV sector came along, but the auto industry in general. And the production in Canada continued to decline. All we were doing by providing these bailouts was giving ourselves the right to go on giving them more bailouts. Then the EV came along and we got really excited, and the Trudeau government promised, what was it, $50 billion for 3 battery plants, one of which has already collapsed, the second of which is pivoting to energy storage of batteries, not for EVs, and the third of which may have to go the same route since one of the plants it was going to be producing the batteries for has pivoted to gas vehicles. So that's not worked out terribly well. The Honda thing has not worked out terribly well. It wouldn't be any more of a good idea if they'd worked out, because you're still basically substituting your own judgment for that of the investors who are investing their own money and whose jobs depend upon getting it right. Whereas for the political thing, it's just about getting to the next political cycle. This is a habitual thing in governments of trying to basically second guess the market. All you're doing is transferring resources from one sector to another. You're not creating jobs, you're just trading one job for another. You'd think we would learn from these repeated episodes, but unfortunately we don't. And of course, the most recent one is we're now bailing out every section of the media as well.
So, but to play devil's advocate, or a contrast point, would be the aerospace industry, which governments have also propped up and bailed out. And then you saw this week, the government, no money involved in this particular order with Bombardier, but the government was there celebrating this big order of planes. So I don't know, Althea, how do we make sense of that? And then I'll get Chantal.
Well, the federal and especially the provincial government have given Bombardier a lot of money, a lot of loans, and a lot of direct subsidies. Yep. And this deal, I think everybody should be excited about because it didn't actually have anything to do with the government. It seems like the airline was just like, this is a good time to buy a lot of planes because we're going to get a really good price because fuel is super high, and now is the best time that we can negotiate. And we don't really know what that means, but it does mean a lot of jobs for people around Mirabel. Yeah. I think on the subsidy aspect that Andrew was talking about, the problem is all industry mostly are so heavily subsidized by their own governments. So it's like, do you want to play in that sphere, or do you decide not to play at all. And there are things that I don't think the Trudeau government at all anticipated, that, you know, Donald Trump would upend free trade between the two countries, and that the future of the auto parts and vehicles going back and forth across the border would be called into question. And so I think it's just beholden on us as taxpayers and as citizens to demand, you know, what is it. It's okay to address a crisis in the short term, but what's the long term? And sometimes I don't think we ask that enough. And it's like we gave all these companies EVs subsidies for EV vehicles, but we didn't really demand that government build out the EV infrastructure, right? And that's why in some part everybody's going to hybrids, because there isn't that EV infrastructure.
Chantal?
Yeah, well, it's hard to forecast a U.S. administration that is willing to hurt itself to hurt others, which is basically what's happening to the auto industry. Yeah. But beyond that, what I found interesting in that order of planes was that one of the main reasons they were ordered is because those planes that we manufacture consume less fuel than the average plane. And in this day and age, considering what's happening to fuel, that was a major advantage. So for those who say the climate issue, the fuel charges issue, it's all gone, we bet on the wrong horse, I'm thinking maybe we're pausing, but the future may be a lot different.
30 seconds or so, Andrew.
You know, if the fact that other countries are willing to subsidize their industry is a reason why we shouldn't do it. If we were the only ones doing it, and we could steal a worldwide monopoly in the product and we reap super profits from it, it might be worth doing in that absurd situation. But if everybody's doing it, then everybody's just basically throwing good money after bad. Australia said goodbye to its auto industry when it said that we're tired of bailing you out every year. They haven't looked back. Australia's not the poorer because of it, and we would not be the poorer if we put an end to the subsidy game in both aerospace and automobiles.
Okay, you guys had lots to say on that. And you
always good thing you're not elected, Andrew.
that's it for At Issue
Good luck
on the National.
Ontario.
We're going to continue this conversation. We'll talk about provinces testing the waters on the social media ban. Catch that on YouTube or the podcast. Now back to Adrian in Toronto.
Thanks, Rosie. Coming up, a face-off of sorts between the Habs and the Sabres, but this time it's off the ice.
You can call them Montreal Wings, but in the end, they're still Buffalo Wings. Sorry, Jim.
How their round 2 matchup turned into a cross-border food feud. Next. Check this out. This is a spice shelf at a Buffalo grocery store, noticeably missing Montreal steak spice. Not out of stock, but a little bit of a form of retaliation. So you see, the owner pulled the product after a Montreal pub renamed things like Buffalo Wings. Can't have Buffalo Wings in the playoffs in Montreal. It's just some cross-border cheerful chirping. So their food fight makes our moment.
Nothing Buffalo allowed at Cunningham. How can we serve Buffalo sauce wings? How can we do that and support the Habs? I said, you know what? Nothing Buffalo on the menu. No Buffalo sauce, no Buffalo wraps, no Buffalo burgers, no Buffalo poutine. So we changed the names to little, Montreal Canadiens names. So the Arbour Jack wrap, we have the Dobes poutine, with the Galley burger, and it's a Montreal wing sauce. It's not going to be the Buffalo wing sauce anymore.
You can call them Montreal Wings, but in the end, they're still Buffalo Wings. Sorry, Jim. If they're going to do that, we got to do something in response. We carry a product called Montreal seasoning, so we played back and took the Montreal seasoning off the shelves in all 4 stores.
The Buffalo wing was invented in Buffalo, and Montreal invented hockey. Buffalo is a brother of ours, but when it comes to hockey on the ice, there's no friends on the ice. Once that whistle blows and you cross that line, we're ready to play hockey, we want to win the second round. And I know we're going to be in the Stanley Cup Finals this year, so no problem at all.
We could take it in 4.
Maybe I'll take a drive down when we win the series and go say hi to them.
You know what? They've never met. They've never even spoken, but I feel like they're going to connect. Jim, who's a Habs fan, went super far. He even changed the computer system so that when customers get their bill at the end of the night, it doesn't say Buffalo Wings. From all of us at the National, go Habs. Thanks for being with us. I'm Adrian Arsenault. Take care.